Okay, we now head on over to Seattle, Washington. Our EBC correspondent, Denden Fedjeran, is still standing by. Denden, how are you over there in Washington?
Doing well. How are you, Alma?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Good.
What is the situation
Doing
over
great.
there on the COVID-19 situation?
Well, here in Washington State, the current statistic update, we have 1,376 positive cases of the coronavirus, 8 new reported death cases since yesterday, leaving us with a total of 74 deaths here in Washington State. Now, due to the continuous spread, Governor Inslee tweeted that he's putting a halt to elective surgeries and dental services that require the use of medical protective equipment, like masks, gloves, and so forth, as we would need to preserve all of this equipment for the healthcare workers as they work on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic. There are, of course, exceptions for emergency and urgent needs. Some of the banned procedures include, but are not limited to, are joint replacements, most cataract and lens surgeries, non-urgent cardiac procedures, cosmetic surgeries, some endoscopies, some interventional radiology services. Now, this order doesn't apply to patients with heart attacks, strokes, motor vehicle accidents. And just 2 days ago, Governor Inslee wrote a letter to President Trump. The letter states that Washington represents 2% of the American people, 20% of those infected with COVID-19, and 61% of the fatalities caused by COVID-19. Now, with the anticipation that things will worsen by the end of the month, like the hospitals will, we anticipate the hospitals be in crisis then. He actually wrote this letter to request from President to send us a U.S. Navy hospital ship, which thankfully would come with a full crew. Now, if President Trump does grant this request, it would just be another way to show the Washington people how much the federal government does indeed support us. And we could actually find more details on government.wa.gov. Now, what's nice, Alma, is that, and viewers, is that the people of Washington continue to be reminded of how we can protect ourselves from the disease. And one of the ways that is not being drilled as much as hand washing is actually getting plenty of rest. And a lot of people can do that now because there's a lot of people out of work, right? So to get plenty of rest, drink plenty of fluids, eat healthy foods, and manage your stress to keep your immunity strong. And what's really nice to go out into the community and to speak with my coworkers, how do you manage stress? Well, a Seattle resident, Len Lauricio, she manages her stress by allowing creativity and reorganization flow in her household. So she's taking time to reorganize the home, focus on crafts like paper flowers for her upcoming wedding. And Len says, we're enjoying figuring out how things should look and how flowers will work together, pairing particular colors. So these simple discussions is actually really edifying the relationship between her and her family. And another thing that they like to do is go to the movies together. Now, no, it's not at the theater because the theater was actually closed down. So what they do is they log in, right? And they select the same movie and they're allowed to enjoy each other's commentary in a chat room. And Alma, we like to call this Netflix party.
I like that.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm about to have a party tonight.
With all the negativity, the whole situation here, lastly, I would like to ask you, all those things you said is positive. What can you say? What can you take away from all this situation, this crisis? What takeaway can you?
Yes. Thank you for asking that question because this will really come from my heart, and I feel this every day, especially working with patients and still being out there in the field and meeting a lot of families. One thing I like to tell everyone that I come in contact with and we have this discussion is that the comforting thing to know is that we're all in this together, this pandemic. So no one is alone. And because of this, we're able to go back to basics. As simply as washing hands, this is something that we learned when we were kids, right? So, back to basics in that sense, but ultimately, we go back to the homes. The distractions are removed. So now we have the time to really refocus on the things that matter to us most. We're going back to board games. We're bringing our families back into the kitchen to cook a meal together, baking, playing with our pets, taking our pets out for a walk, and it just really makes you think, where does my time, where should I put my time towards? And maybe this is God's way of telling us, hey, we need to just not panic, remain calm, trust, and enjoy the blessings that come that's coming from this pandemic.
Thank you very much, Denden. That is very uplifting, very insightful. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Denden Feher in Seattle, Washington. We live in interesting times.